Hello everybody, Miss Lisa here. Welcome back to another episode of Drawing for Kids. A couple weeks ago we did a patterned peacock, and that was a lot of fun. Not exactly realistic, but it was a lot of fun to do, to learn about patterns and to make this beautiful bird. Last week we started looking at how to get some results like this, where I showed you how to make items look like they're overlapping, and that gives the effect of something in front and something behind. So when we drew these apples, we drew them in such a way that this apple was in front of this apple, and this apple was in front of these two apples, and all of these apples were in front of this apple, and this apple was in front of these two apples. So if you didn't see those two videos and you want to learn how to do those projects, just go ahead and look at Drawing for Kids Part 1 and Part 2. Now today, I'm going to show you how to draw some realistic shapes. We're going to be looking at how to draw containers. Containers are things that we put stuff in. For example, I'm going to show you how to draw a jar and a glass. Now that doesn't sound too exciting, but actually it is, because every time you draw, you have to think really hard about what you're doing if you're trying to make something look realistic. And the more you practice, the more accomplished, the better you'll get at doing this. And I find that when I draw, I think constantly. I'm asking myself all sorts of questions. Although I seem to be just sitting there quietly, my mind is just going and going and going. And I think that really helps me to capture the quality, the shapes, the lines, everything that I need to tell the story of what I'm trying to draw. So it might look like just a glass of water to you or just an empty jar. But to me, there's a lot that goes into this. And I think if I tell you what I'm thinking as I'm going through this, it's going to help you understand what I'm doing. When I was a kid, and even when I was getting older and thought about being an artist, I always thought, what do artists think? I always wanted to know, what do they think? What are they thinking? And now that I think I can consider myself an artist, I enjoy sort of giving you a running dialogue of not just how to make your pictures, your drawings, or paintings better, but also what I'm doing, what I'm thinking as I'm going through those same steps. First of all, let's talk about some useful things if you want to be serious about your drawing. Okay, so I recommend that you pick up some newsprint. It's very inexpensive. Here's one by a company called Canson, and I use this a lot in my classes when I teach. Just plain old paper, but it's inexpensive, and big sheets are good because if you have a big piece of paper, it encourages you to draw an image larger, and that's important when we do art. You don't want to draw tiny little things. You want to have a nice space to put your artwork. I also recommend that you have some sort of book where you can keep your drawings. I have many sketchbooks. This is my favorite one, and I've got things in here from years and years ago. But this is one where I started. You can see I paint in it sometimes. I draw. I have all sorts of ideas for paintings I haven't done yet, and things I've learned as well. So I've got ideas, I've got sketches, I've got Post-it notes. I do a lot of sketching on Post-it notes, and I try to keep everything in one place. So when I need an idea, or I think, oh yeah, what was I thinking about that some time ago, I can go back and look in my sketchbook. And a lot of the things in the sketchbook have turned into actual paintings that I have finished, and that's kind of fun too, to see how they start and then how they finish on canvas. But today we're going to be talking about drawing, and so you're going to need, I'm just going to also show you my regular paper. So this paper is probably just copier paper. It might be a very lightweight drawing paper. It doesn't really matter because you're just going to be making a drawing. If you were doing a painting after the drawing, you would want a heavier paper. This is not good for watercolor because it's going to get very wet very easily. And, for watercolor painting, you need something a little bit thicker. And then you need something to draw with. These mechanical pencils from Costco are one of my favorite things to draw with. But I also love the drawing pencil sets. This is one that has it has a variety of hardnesses of lead. So I can get I've been showing you these before. If I draw with an H pencil, I can get a light line. If I want the line to be darker, I go with a B pencil. And I'm going to be doing my drawings today with a 3B pencil. I'm not going to use the H's at all because I don't think you can see what I'm drawing on the camera. So I'm going to be using my 3B pencil as my light pencil, and then I will go over the lines that I like with my 6B pencil, which will be even darker. You also might want to have an eraser. You know that I prefer that you don't use an eraser. It's great to get in the habit of not erasing, but sometimes we have guidelines that we put in. You might see this very light line here. I can take that out afterwards. I do the same thing when I draw this glass of water here. I've got a guideline that helps me get my two edges where I need them to be to describe the shape of the glass or the jar that I'm drawing. So let me start with the glass because it's probably easier. It has less detail, and we're going to first take a look at the glass. And I always want to, look at whatever I'm trying to draw and think to myself what I'm looking at. Of course, if it's something dangerous, I don't want to draw a scorpion by picking it up, but I might be still doing some of the same things I'm going to be talking about if I was drawing a scorpion or something dangerous. Of course, I don't want to go up to a scorpion and draw it. That would be really bad. But if there's a picture of one, I might be measuring the size of its body versus the size of its tail and doing all of that in my head. So I'm not taking a ruler. I'm not measuring it with a ruler. I'm thinking about what is the length of that in comparison to the length of something else. What is the length of the head of a lion in comparison to the length of its body? What is the length of the paw in comparison to the length of the leg? So all of these things are going on in your head, and if you can answer those questions and draw what you're thinking and measuring in your head on the paper, you'll end up with something that looks pretty realistic as you practice this process. So with my glass, I'm going to hold it up and I'm going to tell you what I see. I see something that is symmetrical, same on both sides. I know that if I tip it, the water is going to pour out. But what I'm seeing when I put it down on the table is an oval shape at the top. Even though I know that it's a circle, I'm seeing an oval. And this is super important when you draw. You have to you can't draw what you know. You have to draw what you see. I know the glass is a circle. I know it's circular on top. The opening is circular, but I cannot draw it as a circle unless I'm looking straight down on it. What I am seeing is an oval shape. Now the bottom of the glass, we know it's flat, right? we know it's flat because it sits on the table and it doesn't tip over when it sits on the table. And we know that glass is flat, and we can see that it actually is described by a curved line. The only time we can draw the bottom flat is if the glass is actually at eye level, and you can try this with a glass at home. If you are seeing directly across, and I know it looks different on the camera, but what I'm seeing when it's directly in front of my eyes is a flat bottom. For you, it looks like I'm looking up at it. It's just the camera angle. So try this at home. Take a glass and look at it and decide what you're seeing and what you is that different from what you know. We know it's flat, but I'm seeing something that looks like an oval if I look up at it. I'm seeing that it's flat when it's right in front of my eyes. And when I put it on the table, I'm seeing a curve that can be described by another oval. So let's start with the top. And what I'm drawing is what I am seeing. It's going to look a little bit different to you because, again, the camera angle is not the same as the angle that I am looking at when I look at the glass. But you can change things and do this yourself, and you'll see what I mean. So I've got my 3B pencil, and it's going to look a little bit like an oval shape to me. And when I do my ovals at the beginning, I call these finding lines. I just go round and round until it feels right. And so I'm thinking to myself, is that an oval that best describes the top of the glass? It's actually rounder than the oval I drew initially. It actually goes up a little bit, comes down a little bit. From where I'm sitting, from where I'm looking at this glass, the oval shape is more like this. I'm going to get my oval shape. And when I teach in person, I encourage you all to do this as well. Find a good oval that describes the shape at the top of the glass or the jar or whatever else you're drawing. And then we're going to draw a very light line, a guideline. We're going to draw a vertical line that goes through the glass. Try to judge whether or not it's straight by looking at the edges of your paper. It should line up with the edge of your paper. So you can see I was starting to go off a little bit there. And then I'm going to say, how tall is this glass in comparison to how wide is the top of the glass. So in my mind, I am measuring this distance, and I'm going a 1, 2. So it's about 1 width across, and it's about 2 widths in height. So I'm thinking if it's about 1 width across, and it's about 2 widths in height, this one's gonna come almost down to the bottom of my paper. And now I'm going to there's actually another oval that I'm seeing at the bottom of the glass because I can see through the glass, and I know that it will appear to be an oval shape. And when it sits on the table, we're going to be looking at this curve, the curve at the front of the glass. If you are drawing a bowl, the same thing. It will have a circle that you're going to draw as an oval on top. And then as you get down to the foot of the bowl, which is the part that sits on the table, it will appear to be curved unless you're looking straight at the bowl. If you hold it up in front of your face and your eyes are directly across from the bottom of the bowl, it will appear to be straight and flat. Otherwise, we have to draw this with a curved line when it's sitting on the table and we're looking slightly down into it. Okay, now my edges are going to be a diagonal line. I think you can agree with me there. The top is wider than the base. So I'm going to try to make a line. And you can see I've got little extra bits here and there that I'm not worried about yet. I've got this bit, and that's probably going to stick off a little bit, and I've got this bit here. I'm just going to continue. So now I have two sides of the glass. I have the base, and I have the top. And because we made this line down the middle, we can mentally measure. I'm thinking, is this distance the same as this distance? Is this distance the same as this distance? Is that the same as this distance? And that's how I'm able to get the two sides looking symmetrical. Now, I'm also going to do one more thing here. I'm going to make one more adjustment because I'm thinking, is the top of the glass wide enough for the length? And I think I actually want to make this a little bit bigger now, so I can do that. I need another oval. So this is going to now be wider on top as it comes down, and wider here as it comes down. And I think that better describes the shape of the glass. So at this point, when you have now a few lines and it's starting to look confusing, now's a good time to tidy it up a little bit, but you don't need to use your eraser all the time, like to get your oval shape. And think of it as a way to tidy up some extra lines as opposed to redrawing anything. Do you see how I didn't redraw the whole glass? I just changed things slightly. Okay, so now I'm happy with that. And this glass has water in it, right? And where is that water in comparison to the top of the glass? So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, if we divide this glass into thirds, there's 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. 1, 2, 3. The water is about 1/3 of the way down the glass. So I'm going to find approximately 1/3 of the way down this glass. And if you look at the water line, you see it also looks like an oval shape. It's not just straight across, right? It appears to be an oval. So I need to make an oval that's about 1/3 of the way down the glass. When I say down the glass, I mean 1/3 of the way from the top of the glass. Okay, so now we've got some water in our glass. And now we're going to look at, what else does it have? It's got this little pattern on it. I don't know, I think you can see it. If I hold it up to my shirt, you might be able to see it. It has a pattern that's kind of like a wavy line, a bumpy line. It kind of goes bump, bump, bump. And then there's some slightly angled lines. So I'm going to make that pattern too. And when I look at the pattern, it's about halfway from the top of the water to the base. Not the bottom of the glass, but the base of the part where the water goes. So I can get water to about here, and then this is just glass here. So I'm going to first put the glass part. I'm going to make that look a little bit more solid because it's just a thickness of glass. Slightly thicker than the sides. And then I'm going to make a line through here. And I'm going to make some, I don't have to draw the whole, it's kind of like a pattern. I don't have to draw the whole pattern, maybe just a little bit to give the viewer an idea that there's actually something going on in the glass itself. So it's not just a smooth glass, it's got a little bit of a design in the glass. Now when I do this part, anytime you have a pattern or a design on a curved surface, it also has to curve. So although, what you're seeing is not the same thing as what you know that this pattern goes around the glass and it's this far all the way around. This pattern, the top of the pattern is the same distance from the bottom of the glass all the way around. But what you see is it sort of coming down because we drew the front of the glass like this, so the pattern has to follow that. It also has to go down at the low spot and come up at the high spots. So it's basically going to be a curve as well. It's going to be this design on a curve. If I had different kinds of stripes on this glass, or if it was a bowl, for example, the pattern will have to follow the top of the glass. So if it was a bowl with some striped patterns with pretty designs in them, even though they're striped straight across, and we know that they are straight across, what we see is actually a curve of design. Okay, so think about that the next time you draw a bowl or any kind of container. Look for those things and think about it as you go. So now I've got this sketch. And when I say sketch, I mean it's not your finished piece of artwork, and it's just a sort of a preliminary design. And I'm going to finish it up just a little bit. I've got my 6B pencil now, so I know it's going to be darker. And I'm going to think about the two sides of my oval being straight across, because the sides of the glass will have to meet the top of that oval. Will have to meet the sides of the oval. Let me say that again. The top of the glass will have to meet each side of the oval at the same point, directly across. I can't have this side meeting the oval up here because it's going to be lopsided. To get the oval to be straight, I have to have these 2 points coming to the oval across, equally across. Sometimes it's really hard to tell people what you're trying to say when you do art, because the left brain is the language center and the right brain is the creative side. We tend to be able to not speak about what we're doing when we try to think about art and do it at the same time. What I'm trying to say is that to get my oval to look right, for the top of the glass to look correct, this side of the glass has to touch the oval shape at the furthest point along the oval. And then if you go along to the other side of the oval, the other side of the glass has to touch the far side of the oval at the same spot. So you can think of drawing a very light line across there, and both sides of the glass have to attach to the oval at the same place. And then I'm going to just fill in the water line a little bit darker. Now, what's extra in our sketch here that we don't really want in the final drawing? Well, for one thing, the guidelines, right? We've got this guideline and the one I just put in so that the two sides of my glass will end up in the right place. Guidelines are okay to erase, and parts of the first ovals that are still on my paper. Because you are only using them to help you place other things. So we can take away those and maybe draw. When I look through the bottom of the glass, there's a lot of distortion at the bottom because we've got the color of the table and we have this different pattern that we're looking through. So it's not clear exactly what I'm looking at, and I'm going to sort of make it look kind of dark but not distinct. And then also, you might notice that the bottom of the glass is not just a curved line like I drew here. This is my curved line. It actually goes in. So it's actually, because of this pattern, it actually goes all the way to the bottom of the glass, and then the line comes in, and then this comes down, and this goes out, it comes in, and then this goes down, and this comes in. So this is more accurate, but the whole thing has to, again, be on a curve. I'm just going to make this a little bit darker on the edges. And I want to do a little bit more to the top of the glass as well, because I want to, this looks like a very thin piece of glass. It's actually not. There's a little bit of width to the glass. And so I want to make that more apparent by doing something like this. You can see here I just kind of went like this to darken up the edge so it looks like it's not just paper thin. And you can see that it's wider on top here than my drawing. It actually looks more like this. Okay, so here's one of my drawings. I might just add a little bit of shading to the edges to make it look a little bit more three-dimensional. There's a couple more bits of guideline that I might want to get rid of. And here's our finished glass. Now, I want to show you one more, because like I said, I think you can learn a lot from watching other artists, even if they're having a hard time explaining what they're doing. I'm going to show you how I would draw the mason jar. And so I'm going to actually move it a little bit so that you can see it better. I'm going to put it on a white piece of paper. It will show up better. And again, the angle that you see it at in the camera is not going to be the same angle that I am seeing it at. So it's going to look a little bit different for you as I draw it, because I'm looking at it here. I'm looking at it from the side. You're looking at it, the camera angle here is more on top, so you're looking at it a little bit more top, and from the camera in front of me, you can't see it. You'll have to just believe it's there. Okay, so I'm going to start the same way. I'm going to be thinking about the oval shape Even though I know it's a circle, I have to draw it as an oval because I'm looking down at it and not directly down at it. If I look directly down on it, it would look like a circle. And I'm not looking directly down at it, so I know it has to be an oval shape. And I'm going to go round and round and round until I find, oh, I need my 3B pencil. Until I find an oval that thus describes what I'm seeing, not what I know. I know it's a circle, but I'm seeing an oval. And the oval is kind of a roundish oval. It's not a little skinny oval. You have to think of the shape of the oval as well. Okay, and I'm going to draw my guideline straight down the middle. You don't need to use a ruler to do this. The more you practice without a ruler, the better you get at these things. Now this one's going off to the right, to the left, the other one was going off to the right. So I just make a little bit of adjustment. And how I'm getting this line straight without using a ruler, it's not perfectly straight enough for my purposes, is I am mentally gauging the side of the paper to the line. So this distance here should be pretty much the same. Should be the same up and down the paper. If I find that my line is going like this, then when I measure it against this edge of my paper, this is going to be much smaller than this distance. So I'm measuring in my mind the side of the paper to the line and making sure that it's the same all the way down. Now you don't have to get stressed about it. If it's not the same, like here it was going off, I just stop and start again. If you keep erasing all the lines as you go, you find that you never get to the end. And we don't want to do that because finishing something feels really good, right? So we've got our line. And now I'm looking at the shape. Okay, the shape of the mason jar is different than the glass. The glass was diagonal down the length of the glass. The mason jar is kind of straight, well, except for these bits that stick out for the lid to help the lid screw on. But it has then a curve, and then it's straight, and then a curve. So we could describe this as being almost like a cylinder that goes in at the bottom of the neck, and then it's a cylinder, and then it's kind of rounded on the bottom. Not completely round, it's going to appear like it has the curved bottom because we're looking down on it. Okay, so let's move that over. Let's reposition our paper. And I'm going to start out with just a straight line here to describe the edges of the part where the lid would screw down. And I'm going to make another curve here because that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a curve here. And then I see that this goes in a little bit and then it comes out and straight down. So in a little bit, then it comes out, and it comes out a little bit further than this part. So this out has to come out. It's kind of rounded. And now when I draw the side of the jar, I'm doing the same thing as when I drew the line. I'm making sure it's straight by measuring the distance from the edge of my paper to the straight line that I am drawing. I'm mentally measuring that. I'm not doing it with a ruler, and I don't need to. I can readjust Like if this goes out like this, I could say, well, that's not straight because this is a shorter distance than this distance here. If that happens, and if I draw it like that first, it doesn't matter. I just redraw it straight. Now I'm also not just measuring in my mind the distance from the edge of the paper to the side of the jar. I'm also in my mind measuring the distance of this side compared to that side. So from the center line to the edge of the mason jar, it's got to be the same on the other side. The middle of the mason jar to the edge, the middle to the edge of the mason jar. Okay, so I'm thinking, is this distance the same as this distance? Is this distance the same as this distance? And that's looking pretty good. I'm going to now round off the bottom a little bit. And I'm thinking, what is the distance from here to here? And how does that relate to this? I'm kind of measuring it in my head. And I can see through the glass, and it's not so distorted this time because it doesn't have that same sort of pattern that the drinking glass had. And I can see through the glass of the mason jar, and I can see that the base I can describe as another oval. And the front of the jar is going to be a curved line, just like we talked about earlier. And then this is going to come up to join the edge. And this side is going to come up to join the edge. And these two joints should be the same height. If I draw a guideline that goes through here, it should join the side of the mason jar at the same point on both sides, except I didn't draw my line straight. And how do I know that? I know that because the distance from the bottom of my paper to this point has to be the same as the bottom of my paper to this point. So I can get the edge of my jar connecting to the base of the jar at the same distance from the bottom. All right, so now at this point, I'm going to tidy things up just a little bit because I've got lots of guidelines. I'm going to take my eraser and tidy up this. I'm going to leave the center line for the moment. And I'm going to think, I'm looking for things that kind of don't seem right. And this doesn't seem right because I've drawn it, again, paper thin, like I started out the drinking glass the same way. It actually has more of a rim to it. So I'm going to indicate that by darkening up the top here. And it also has almost a texture. It has these ridges where the where the lid would screw on. Okay, so let's put some of that in there. And now I'm going to redraw this little bump because I made it kind of a square bump. I need it to be a little bit rounded here and then straight down. And again here it needs to be in and a little bit rounded and then straight down. Now I'm going to do a little bit of detail to make it look like a mason jar. I'm going to put, I see this line here. I'm going to add that. Now that line has to be parallel to the edge of the jar and to our guideline because it's a vertical line and the sides of the jar are vertical. And these lines appear to me like diagonal lines. We know that they're straight across, but because everything is going to, any pattern on the sides is going to have to follow the bottom of the jar. So these lines, we're going to draw them as sloping downwards, if that makes sense. And my spacing is off, so I'm going to redraw those a little bit. Normally I wouldn't draw these lines so dark so that I could go back and alter them without making too much of a production. But because I'm drawing them darker so that you can see them, I have to alter them. And you're going to see some other stuff as well, like my original marks. Okay, now I've got this word. I can see B-A-L. I think it says balls, right? Yeah, it says ball. Okay, so I see partial word. I see B-A-L. And I see a diagonal line here. Now you're not going to be able to see this from where you're sitting, but I'll hold the jar up afterwards so you can see. You'll just have to kind of watch it appear in my drawing. Okay, from where I'm sitting, the B looks kind of like this. And we have the A, and we can see part of the L, part of the first L. And then there's this bit underneath. And then we see M. The M for Mason starts under the curve there of the B, at the beginning of the B. Right, M, A, S, O. I'm not going to get the whole word on, but that's okay. So the writing also is going to follow this curve. And you'll see this like if you try to draw words, look at a can label and try to draw the label as it curves around the can. You'll have to make the writing kind of curve as well if you want to draw it realistically. Unless, of course, you're drawing just one word and you're looking at it straight on. Then it won't look curved. But if you are, and it's a short word, if you're drawing a lot of different things, just remember to draw what you see and not what you know. Okay, so I'm just going to finish this up with my darker pencil. Let me just hold this up so you can see what I was drawing. I don't know if you can see it there, but I'll hold it up to this camera. It says ball, mason. Now, when I look at my drawing, and I'm mentally measuring things in my head, I'm wanting to make this part wider. So after I'm done, I kind of fiddle around with it a little bit until this part's curved. Sometimes I can get it straight off, but usually there's alterations to be made. And I need to make this come down a little bit more because this part where the the lid screws on is actually a pretty major part of the mason jar. I drew it too small, and this still needs to be rounder. There's a curve here that I'm not showing you. There's a curve here. And this should be more of a curve here. So I'm saying to myself, are my lines representative of what I'm seeing? If I see a straight line, did I draw it straight enough? If I saw a curved line, is it the correct curve? Is it too flat? Is it a flat curve? Is it a rounded curve? So I'm just going to darken the bottom a little bit because that's where it's sitting on the table. And I can tidy up some of these guidelines. And then the last thing I want to do is just take my dark pencil. So that was my 3B. You can see that because it's a B pencil, it's still pretty dark. Now I'm going to take my 6B pencil, and you can see that I had messed around here by making this wider at the top. I don't even need to worry about erasing those lines because I can just take my dark pencil and emphasize the part that I want to be part of the finished drawing. And that way I don't have to make a lot of erasing. I want to give the rim some strength. I want it to make it look like it's not a skinny little piece of glass, but a sturdy jar. So if I make the rim wider by adding some graphite up there to make it look like it's actually got some width up here, it'll look a lot more like a sturdy mason jar. And I'm just going to, because this is glass, I can see through the glass. I have to actually bring a little bit of some of this pattern through because you'll be able to see it through the glass. You can see what I mean? You can see through the glass and you'll be able to see kind of an oval shape through the glass as well. I'll put that curve in. Maybe a few more curves up here. Give the side a little bit of shading. And bring out some of the writing on the side of the jar. And I might just tidy up this little bit of mess here that I made with the markings. Okay, that's pretty much done. I hope you were able to learn something from that running commentary on drawing. I showed you how to draw the glass. I showed you how to draw a glass of water and a mason jar. So remember, if you want to do drawing a lot, get yourself a sketchbook, or at least if you don't have a sketchbook, at least take your drawings and put them in the same place when you're done with them, so you have a collection of them at the end. And I would suggest that you date and title everything that you can, because it's really fun to go back to your drawings 10 or 15 years from now and say, wow, I drew that when I was 10, or I drew that when I was 8 or 15, or however old you are. It's really fun to go back and look at your old drawings. I have stacks of them, as you can imagine, and I have many notebooks, many sketchbooks. So practice your drawing, have a lot of fun with it. Ask yourself questions as you're drawing. Is this straight? Is it the same distance from here to here? What is the distance from the top of the glass to the top of the water, and how does that relate to the rest of the glass? Those sorts of measurements are really important. Those questions are important, and they help you get your drawing looking somewhat realistic. And the more you practice it, the more realistic those drawings will become. So until next week, I want you to be careful, wear your mask when you go out, wash your hands really well, and social distance, and practice your art. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.